now.
Good. So, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this conversation that we'll be engaging in this morning. As we enter into the fall stewardship season, many questions come to mind as we continue to navigate this uncharted territory. One of the critical questions that come to mind is, how can this campaign be a successful one? Today, we gather as members of the Episcopal Diocese of New York and other neighboring dioceses as well to share what we are doing, what we'll be doing. We are grateful for the Episcopal Network for Stewardship, and especially for David Gerhardt, TEN's Executive Director, for taking the time to continue to share with us the many resources and the knowledge this organization gathered through many years of conversations and listening sessions. David joined us in July to talk with us about virtual offering plates and campaigns and to help us access the TEN's resources. The Episcopal Diocese of New York is a TEN's member, which means that all of you can access these resources at no cost at all. David joins us from his home in San Francisco. He also serves as the Director of Development, Stewardship, and Plant Giving in the Diocese of California, and attends Holy Innocents Church in San Francisco's Noe Valley neighborhood. So, David, welcome, and thank you once again for being with us this morning.
Thank you so much, Canon Victor, and to folks from the Diocese of New York and other places. We love it when others join us. So thank you very much for the invitation to be with you today. San Francisco is surrounded on all sides by water and at the moment by fires. It's a very hostile place to be, sadly. So we are sitting inside even more so than usual, with our windows shut and staving off smoke and virus. It's a hard time to be here. But I'm glad to be with you all and hope that things are well in your region. As we move through today's presentation, I just want to give a couple of reminders. This is being recorded, and we will share this video with you and with everyone who's registered. So if you don't want your face shown, it would be a good idea for you to click off your camera. If you don't mind, we'd love to see you, and that keeps us all in conversation. As we move through our slides today, please type your questions that come up into the chat function down below at the bottom of your screen. Type any question in there, and periodically we'll be reading those off. You can also raise your hand. If you look in the participants tab and find your name, you can usually raise your hand. So that will signify to Canon Victor, who's monitoring that for me, how we can make sure that you get your questions answered. I'm going to give plenty of time for questions today because as we approach our stewardship campaigns, I want to make sure you have what you need to be ready to go. With that in mind, I'm going to share my screen and we'll start off our presentation today. Thank you. Welcome to this conversation on virtual stewardship and what we face here in 2020 as we move through this, navigate this ever-changing and tricky year. It's a good time to be reminded that even though everything is so different in 2020, there are many things about our work together in stewardship that remain the same. And the foundation of that is relationship. Everything we do in church, everything we do, especially when we're talking about money in church, is all relational. It's pastoral. It keeps us in touch with each other. So the basic concepts of relationship are also hallmarks of fundraising in our churches. I want to run through a couple of those. Frequent and genuine communication has been essential as we have maintained community all throughout the pandemic, as we found ways to keep connected without being able to see each other in person on Sunday mornings it has been really important for us to communicate, over communicate, make sure our phone trees and our email lists and our newsletters are all active so that we can keep each other in touch with each other. That's doubly true for our stewardship campaign, because we are not just asking people to stay in touch with us, we were also asking them, inviting them into a deeper relationship in fundraising and in offering their time and their talent and their treasure to our churches. So keep the communication going. We have to teach and learn all the time about money and meaning. Even though Jesus talks about money in 40% of his parables, money, possessions, and our relationships to them, it's not a frequent topic in many of our congregations. It's not easy to talk about money in church, but when we combine money with meaning and mission and help people understand how all of the gifts, their time and their talent and their treasure, work together to fulfill the mission, we're actually getting going on something that's really important here. So teach, learn, talk about money and meaning in your church. It's not an impossible topic. As we move into Pledge Campaign, make certain that everybody knows why they're being asked for financial gifts this year. What is your money going toward? What mission-focused projects are you doing in your congregations? And mission-focused projects doesn't mean that you have to be a massive budget church with all these different programs, a menu of options. Your basic opening the door and keeping people in communication with each other and offering the services of church is also missional. And we should be able to talk about that at whatever level we're at, big church, small church, rural church, urban church. We're all doing mission all the time. Be clear about that when we are talking about fundraising. Transparent and accountable leadership and in financial leadership is essential. So your budget should be posted online or in the parish hall when we can gather in them again. People should know how the money is spent, how it's raised. We should be your vestry minute meetings or your vestry meeting minutes should be published. People should know what goes on in the church and how decisions are made. Transparency is really important to helping people feel that integrity and that ease in being able to invest into their congregation. I think that as we have moved through this summer of pandemic, this may be the year when our stewardship committees need to make phone calls instead of just depending on letters. We might need to do some personal outreach in our fundraising, in our stewardship campaigns this year. Plan for that. These are beautiful moments, and we'll run through some ideas later today. These are beautiful moments for members to connect with members about the gifts that they have to offer and the plans that they can make. Always in our relationships, we want to be thankful and express our gratitude. Whatever ways people give to the church, let's remember always to give thanks to them and the work that they've been able to do. We spent some time earlier this summer talking about virtual offering plates, and I'm not going to go into detail. I will share with you how you can access way more than you ever wanted to know about virtual offering plates. But I do want to run through a couple of basic concepts here. The first and foremost is that you should have a way for your members to make gifts online. This is important when we are gathered virtually or when we are gathered in person. You should have a way for people to give on their website, on an app, on their phones if possible, for plate and for pledge. This is because it's no longer usual for individuals to carry cash. If I were visiting your congregation, and I could do that, and the plate came by me, I would have a couple of dollars maybe in my wallet, and they've been there for a long time because I rarely use cash anymore. I use my debit card for almost everything. You're missing the opportunity to collect money if you don't have virtual ways for people to do that. There's also a great automatic relationship that happens when you use online fundraising tools. The receipt is automatic. The letter that you can put in there can be personalized. And that way people are always getting feedback. The gift has been received, it's being applied, we really appreciate it. More and more donors rely on online giving or mobile giving to make their gifts. And it's not just millennials and Gen Z folks who give online. People in my world, the Gen Xers, 40 to 59, are the largest group of online donors. So that's your families. That's people who are in your church doing, raising their families, working in their careers. They are the largest group of online donors. Faith-based online giving has grown almost 9% in the last 2 years. That's a pretty fast change for an institution that doesn't change very quickly. Also, our older folks, boomers, are also making, boomers and greatest generation folks are making gifts online. 59% of donors 66 and above have made a gift online of some kind. This is a really important statistic because we often say, boomers and greatest generation, they don't give online. That's not true. They do. It may not be their primary way, but they have exercised the possibility of doing it before and they know how to do it. That's really important. Across all Protestant denominations in all areas of the United States, when congregations have implemented online giving tools, on average, they've seen their giving go up by 32%. 32%, that's big. So that means if you're not asking for money online, if you're not giving people a way to engage, you're missing out on some things. The ability to make recurring gifts that come right out of your checking account at whatever frequency you want. Mine are tied to my payday. So when I get paid, so does the church. That's just the way I do it. But many people can create these systems, these recurring gifts, so that the congregation has a consistent cash flow. There's none of that summer slump when people are making recurring gifts online. That cash flow crisis that we get into in the summer maintains because people are making their gifts automatically. So those are just a few ways to incentivize you, excite you about making available options to give online. They're donor-centric. So this means to say, the church is notorious for saying, we have one way to do things. And so if you're not doing it, then you're out of the club. It's difficult for us to do anything more than checks and cash, for example, right? So when we say that, we're saying to the member, to the donor, you have to follow our rules, or we're not going to make a way for you to participate in our life. That's not donor-centric. That is leaving money on the table. So we want to make sure that your treasurer and your parish administrator have as many ways as they can manage and not lose their sanity to collect money online. Just don't leave it on the table. You can access our webinar from July. I've given you the links here, and the PowerPoints are in English and Spanish. We go into detail on the different platforms that you can use to raise money online. Are there any questions about online fundraising before I move on to talking about event-based fundraising?
David, there have been a recurring question that I normally get from some congregations around the diocese, and is when we talk about online campaigns and is how do I get my parishioners to engage? You know, how do I get them to see what I want them to see at this moment? And that goes into the line of marketing and all that, but in your expertise, you know, how can we engage that question today?
That's great. There is, I know marketing is another one of those words we don't like in church, but it is an evangelism. It is outreach, and it is inreach when we give people ways to participate in community. I think that for me, the driver always is participating in the mission. If I understand what's being asked of me, and that invitation is about participating more deeply in the community, funding directly the work that my church does in the community, then I understand why I'm being asked for my time and my talent and my treasure. When I can make that connection, this is me speaking about me, I'm motivated to give. I'm not motivated by tradition or duty. Those are things that motivate some people. So we need to rely on all the tools, anything but guilt, I would say, all of the tools that we use to engage people in the mission of the church. So some people want to see impact. What's my gift doing? Some people want to know that they're just supporting a place that they love. Craft all the messages and messaging to reach the various reasons that people in your community want to engage. This is really important, right? We don't just have one reason. Everybody has their own reason for making their pledge. And so the more messaging, the more ideas we have, the more creative ways we can talk about our mission, the more I think we can get people to engage. The other one is just making it available. Now, that's not to say that every Sunday we need to talk about stewardship and we need to drive home the message of fundraising. But it should be more frequent, I would say, than just during your fall pledge campaign. There are things we can do all year round, and we'll be doing a webinar probably in the early part of next year to get everybody thinking about ways that they can engage all year round with the idea of stewardship. Some teaching, some adult forums, some scripture study, things that we can do to keep the conversation alive in people's heads. That's really essential. So we learn from each other. That's another way to engage. Thanks for that question. I see we have some more.
And there is a question here as well. At times, the resistance may come more from the vestry leadership than the congregation. How do we overcome that?
Thank you for saying that. My own congregation, where I've been a member for 22 years, resisted until 2 years ago online giving, right? I've been talking about it and teaching it for a long time, but they resisted it. The vestry was really worried about it because there are fees attached to it. It feels like we are maybe giving in to the world. But the truth is that all of the other ways that Episcopalians make their gifts in the community, when they support the Sierra Club or the opera or their school or a local charity doing great work, those organizations are asking for money online. They're sending frequent notices, and they are engaging your donors, your members, for their money. No longer is church giving the highest and most loyal place that Americans make their gifts, right? For decades, they made their best gift to the church and everything else got the rest. That trend is flipping as more and more and more nonprofits ask for that money online and give your members a way to make their gifts easily. So I would say to your vestry, some of those costs that are associated with online giving, setting up the platform, maybe the transaction cost that goes into paying by debit card or things like that. Those are modern costs of doing business. And it may just be one of those things that we need to absorb in our budgets. Online giving platforms nearly always give the donor the option to cover the cost. So that's to say, if my transaction cost to make a gift of $100 online is 3%, which means only $97 of my 100 would go to the church and $3 would go to the company that allowed that gift to be made. I'm allowed at the time of making that gift to say I'll give $103, so that $100 goes to the church, the entity still gets its money, and the donor has absorbed that. When we're talking about small giving or routine giving, yes, those costs add up, but there are ways that we can just talk about that honestly and say it's one of those things we're doing these days. Our vestries need to help with this. Our treasurers too, and our parish administrators.
There is another question here as well. Along with mail-in pledging, I have made pledging accessible online, but there is the question of confidentiality. Access is only by a password, which is held at the office. I was told the rector is not to see the pledges by anyone. Can you say anything to this?
Well, far be it for me to dictate traditions and policies in your congregation. But I will say that there is a great deal of study, and I will, when I follow up this presentation with an email to all of you, I will include some articles that you can read about why the rector should know what people are making in their gifts. And it comes down to this. Our money is a tool. It's a tool for many things. And we put a lot onto our money. We put our hopes and our dreams and our fears and our retirement plans and our health concerns and our children's education, our security and our insecurity. And we express all of that through our money. And all of those things are pastoral things, moments of milestones in our lives, worries in our lives. And frequently in church, we use our money or we decrease our giving when we have to, when we've lost a job or we have unexpected medical expenses, for example. If we're not also telling the clergy that we're doing those things and we're just missing out on the gift or we're diminishing our giving, we are not giving the clergy the ability to reach out to us and say, regardless of your giving, are you doing okay? What can we do to support you? This is your family. How can we help you? So pastoral reasons are one reasons that your clergy should know what people are giving. We should also trust our clergy to have good boundaries, right? We trust them with deep conversation, even about our own personal failings and loss and regret, right? We have those conversations deeply with our priests. Why can't we also trust them to have boundaries with our money and know what we're giving? They're not going to change their behavior to us if we're giving more or less, just like they're not going to change their behavior with us if we are engaged in some immoral act or have some deep confession to make, right? They have boundaries for a reason. And this is a really important gift to us and to our clergy. It's a reason why we should trust them. Finally, I say that everyone who makes a gift to a pledge campaign does so prayerfully. So we have to trust God too in this process, right? It's not, so yes, my giving is between me and God, but it's also for my community. And I've prayerfully made the best gift that I can. We should assume that others are doing that too. And when they make a gift, that they've done so prayerfully. Please, please involve your clergy in this.
Yes.
Do we have more questions?
No, that was the last one that we got here.
Okay, great. I'm going to move on to event-based fundraising. And we won't spend too much time on this, but I do want to acknowledge that many congregations, aside from their pledge campaigns, also rely on fundraisers to create or to fill in gaps in their budget, or to fund their outreach, or other parts of their budget. And I want to say that this year or any year, if you've had an annual event, you can do it virtually. There are lots and lots of ways to convert your annual event to a virtual one and still have a lot of fun. TENS did a really in-depth webinar on this, and you can take a look at it. I've given you the links here and the PowerPoints in English and in Spanish. It goes through online auction platforms. It talks about best practices for events. If you run an event annually, I'm going to say, please do it this year also. Keep the tradition, just find a way to do it virtually. What kind of events can you do? All of them. I've been attending them all summer long as I learned this stuff with you. So I've seen talent shows, everything from a camera pointed at a piano, somebody singing, I've seen juggling, you know, and you can use the Zoom tools to vote, to give polls, to award people a blue ribbon, to have a lot of fun. I've seen dinners where frequently people sell tickets and they have a lovely dinner together and they get dressed up. Well, you can have that dinner on Zoom together, right? You can contract with a local catering company. Everybody gets the same meal. You're sharing it together and you're talking about it and you've bought a ticket to do that. There are ways to do these things virtually. Find the way that connects with you and please keep doing your virtual events. As I said, we went into a real in-depth on this. Look at that webinar if you have questions. It will answer a lot of them and you can always email me and ask more. Any questions so far? I see a couple more have come in.
There's a comment, and I think there is a maybe opportunity for sharing a bit more. Is the person says, I disagree with making the pledge amounts available to the rector. What do other rectors and churches do?
I would love to hear from clergy who would like to answer that question. We're all shining.
Yes.
Honestly, I don't really have an answer personally. I have been in both situations at different times in ministerial life, and it is something that people tend to be far more sensitive about than I am. And I don't really have a good way to even begin to generalize.
Yeah, it is very personalized, I think.
There is a comment here as well. Our rector is an integral part of the campaign and has access to the numbers if she wants to see them. So yeah.
So that's the other way. Frequently, I think that stewardship committees, like they'll have a list, maybe they'll divide up the congregation, right? And they'll make phone calls. I like to make certain that at least they pass that list. It can have the amounts on it or not, but pass that list before the clergy, before you get on the phone, because the clergy will be able to tell you, oh, well, they've had a really bad year, or this thing that they may be able to talk about or not has happened, and you might not want to call them this year, or you might want to recommend a different strategy, right? Your clergy pastorally keep so many relationships and know so much about each of us, right? That we should rely on them to help us with the fundraising piece as well. So they know what state we're in. And if they don't know, that's a failing too, right? We should be able to get our clergy on board with that so that they can help us. I see, John, you have your hand up.
Sure, thanks. I'll just say I've come full circle on this. I grew up in churches where there was a real sort of pride that the pastor or the rector never knew what people gave. And since being a rector, I found it really pastorally important to know those things for two reasons. One is almost invariably the loudest and most problem-causing people give almost nothing. And that is sometimes very useful information when the person is causing real problems and everybody begins to panic. And the second reason is if someone has been giving and then all of a sudden stops, that often means something. And they're usually not going to share that information at the back of the church as they leave church. But it might mean a marriage is dissolving. It might mean they've lost their job and they're embarrassed by it. And so it creates these real moments that need some discernment and prayer, but often call for a little bit of pastoral attention. So,
thanks, John. And I agree. That's beautiful. You never know what people are going through, and they often make it first with their pledge, and then fill in the blanks later. If we can help them do that, it's really great. All right, let's move on and talk a little bit about your campaigns as we are approaching campaign season. So as you move into October, and I don't know when you'll be beginning your pledge campaigns, if it's this Sunday or if it's a Sunday to come, but know that you are still on track. You can recruit your team and train them. If you don't have materials, which is to say at least a case for giving, something like your budget, and then something that explains your budget. So yes, we pay this much in salary and we pay utilities, but what is that doing? Are we feeding our neighbors? Are we tutoring kids after school virtually? Are we delivering food to the elderly? What are we doing this year that is mission focused? Develop that case and have everybody who's on your fundraising team, your stewardship committee, know how to talk about that. Tell stories, testimonials, why I give, why I participate in stewardship. These are really important stories to tell, and they are mission focused, right? So make opportunities during your pledge campaign through your virtual services on Sundays, your newsletters, whatever way, pre-recorded videos. We can do all kinds of things through technology that people can share the story of why they choose to participate and support their congregation. Storytelling is really important. This year, well, as always, your diocese participates with TENS as member diocese. Therefore, every congregation in the diocese receives our materials for free. Please download them if you haven't yet. What you'll get is in the next slide. In English and in Spanish, you will get sample letters from the clergy and wardens. This is draft language that will give it to you in Microsoft Word so that you can adapt it and put it on your own letterhead and change it around to however you want. But it communicates the core concepts of why we raise money and what we're raising money for. We give you sample pledge cards that are also customizable, but could be ready to print. All you'll have to do is change some names on it, make it yours, or change it in whatever way makes sense for you. This year, I see a lot of congregations are putting their pledge cards online where people can download it and fill it in and email it back to the treasurer or the parish secretary or whatever they're using to collect those pledges. So we give you those pledge cards. We give you a timeline and instructions for running virtual campaigns. So that maps out the steps that you need to take, including using technology to create those virtual campaigns. We give you seasonal reflections on stewardship. So every time the church calendar changes colors, we give you another reflection that you can use as a sermon starter or as an adult ed forum. It takes the liturgy and it breaks it open, and the lectionary, and digs deep into it and gives people some thought-provoking questions that are stewardship focused. So use those resources this year and next year. During pledge campaign season, from October 4th through November 22nd, we give you weekly reflections that are tied to that week's lectionary that break open the scripture and help you have a stewardship-focused conversation. Again, those can be sermon starters, they can be pledge inserts that go into your bulletin. You can use them for an adult ed forum or a rector's forum or a small group meeting. They're great conversation starters. And as always, we give you training on this. So webinars like this, we have webinars that you can access that we've done all summer long on a variety of topics. Check out our website and they're available for you. We really want you to have access to everything you'll need to run your stewardship campaigns this year. When we talk about inviting someone to participate, and we've talked about this already a little today, but I want to just reiterate, asking for money is never easy. I've been a fundraiser in nonprofits and in faith-based organizations for more than 20 years, and I've been working specifically with church at the major donor level for many of those years. My palms still sweat when I ask somebody for a gift. That never goes away, right? So it's not easy work, but the more you do it, the more you understand it, the more relational it becomes a conversation. When I approach it as two humans having a conversation, I can take a deep breath and move into it. But no, it's hard work. Yes, please understand that and reward yourself for that. It's hard work and we appreciate what you're doing. Focus on the mission. When we talk about why we're raising the money, what the money goes for, how our gifts are used in the community, what impact they have, we are no longer just talking about ourselves, right? So we're not saying, I, Davey, ask you for a gift because I really want you to join me. I'm saying, we're supporting all this great work in the community. Will you join that? So that eliminates the fear of personal rejection, right? I'm not asking for me. I'm asking on behalf of all the people we serve, all the people in our church. That's why we're doing this work. So there's no shame. One of the things that we worry about, and as a fundraiser, I always worry about it, is hearing no from someone, right? That's the biggest fear we have in fundraising, that somebody just says no. Well, okay, no happens from time to time. People say it, but know this. The Ecumenical Stewardship Center, which is an incredible resource, they did a study, and what they realized is that 97% of church members who are invited to make a gift do so. So that's to say, you're not going to hear no very often when you're talking about church fundraising. People give, they're waiting for the invitation, they're often ready to make their gift and just waiting to be asked. You're going to get a yes almost all the time. Be really clear about why you're raising money. What is it going for? What impact does it have? Know the case for your church, support it, believe it, make your gift first, then you can have others make that gift. That's the #1 rule in fundraising, right? I can't authentically ask somebody to support something I've not been willing to support myself. So your vestry, your stewardship committee, and your clergy, they should make their gifts right off the bat. Practice your ask, practice your invitation on the people who are in your committee. Develop your talking points. They're going to say yes, and they should say yes, because what that says is we have 100% participation from our leadership. Everybody is here making a gift and ready to go. I'm inviting you into that process. I've given you here 4 scenarios on how to extend the invitation, and these come from some of the real life examples that we have in our churches when it comes time to say, will you participate with me? And I've divided them up into these different categories. When we're just asking somebody to renew last year's gift, make what you did last year, it's still an invitation. So you can remind them of what the money's going for. In this case, we're raising more money than ever to fund our youth program, our outreach to elders, to help our community, right? We made our gift. Will you make up yours? So it's a really simple, after you've had all the conversation and shown them the budget and talked about the world, the invitation is that simple. It's that paragraph. Sometimes we're asking people to increase their giving. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So ask people who can to make a stretch gift. We want to acknowledge, and this goes back to talking with your clergy first, they may know if somebody's had a really difficult year. They may know that somebody's been hospitalized or they've lost a job or other things are happening in the home. So you can still invite those folks to participate, reminding them that every gift that is made so with dignity and prayer and is gratefully and graciously accepted in the church. So even when people have had a tough year, still invite them to participate. This is also about honoring their participation in your community, right? If you just write them off and say they had a bad year, I'm not going to ask them, then you're not giving them the opportunity to give the widow's mite, whatever it is that they can give to support the congregation that they love. Ask them anyway. It will be meaningful, whatever their gift is. And finally, I want to remind all of us that not everybody understands pledging. Not everybody comes into it from the same tradition or the same experience. And so if either you're dealing with newcomers or you're dealing with people who have never pledged, or you're just reminding people, this is why we do this way as Episcopalians, it's frequent, it's for our cash flow, it's because this is the way we run our campaigns. We take more in through pledges than we do the plate, and that's how we base our budget. You can talk about all of that and help somebody who's never pledged before understand why you do. Some challenges that we get into, especially in our small churches. This year, our volunteers are stretched. When we're asking them to use technology, Zoom, to engage with people on stewardship, it's one more thing we're asking our people to do and engage in small screens online. Remember that everybody is a little more stretched this year than they have been in years past. And we are online all the time, seeing each other in these little windows for school, for our socializing, for our family needs, for our work, even telemedicine is happening. So all the things that we do are happening virtually right now. Keep that in mind. Support your volunteers. Make certain that they're well trained. Understand that everybody is carrying this burden right now. When you do small groups in fundraising, and the TENS materials this year talk a lot about how you can use the materials in stewardship-focused small groups. You have these deep connected groups that can talk about their money and their meaning. They will give beautiful gifts if you engage them in this process. Always, always keep things mission focused. That applies to the smallest church and the largest church. There is mission being done. There's reason we're raising this money, and it's not just to keep the lights on and the priest paid. It's to do work in the community. Remind people, remind yourselves that that's why you're doing this. I'm going to focus on 3 more slides about the 2020 difficult conversations, and then we'll open this up to your questions. So how do we talk about money when there's economic fallout from pandemic-related unemployment or other things that have happened to families and households during this economic moment? Remember, and always remember this in stewardship, there is no shame and pledge in less this year than you did last year. If you need to, and you've prayerfully considered that, every gift matters. So train your stewardship volunteers to know that some families are going to have to give less. That's great. We want them to participate. But not everybody is struggling in the same way. Some households have been able to move their work online, and so they're working from home. They're still getting a paycheck. Maybe they've decreased their expenses because they're not traveling or going out to dinner, going out to the theater, right? So these things mean possibly some households have more to give this year than they did last year. Know that and be bold about asking people to increase who can increase. Why not? Remember again, as we've talked about, every conversation about pledging is pastoral. Involve the pastor in those conversations. It's really important. Finally, we've been through tough times. We've been through tough times in a lifetime that we can remember. It was just a decade ago that we had a great recession and we came back through it. Remember that while we are suffering now, there's hope. We will get through this. And the work of the church is really important now because many people need us. Some congregations are facing some budget cuts and steward and program cuts or even staff reductions. And those are painful moments for congregations to go through. And it's unfortunate that it happens right here as we are asking for money and thinking about next year's pledges. So if yours is a congregation that is going to be presenting a reduced budget for next year's campaign because things have changed, keep your conversation focused on the mission. Help people know that just because there's less money doesn't mean there's less work in the community. People still need to be fed. People still need to be cared for. That work continues. So as people can make their gifts, please don't have them reduce their gift because the budget has reduced, right? Make the best gift they can. If your congregation applied for and received a PPP loan earlier this year, it's a good reminder to tell people we've been working hard all year to make sure that we can stay open, to make sure that we can fund our ministry. We've done the diligence to keep all of this working. That helps establish that goodwill. We're not just waiting for you to make a gift. We've been working really hard all year long to keep things moving. That talks about our integrity as churches. And how do we talk about stewardship when we're not sure what 2021 is going to bring, right? So we're asking people to pledge for next year. And after this year, who knows what another year could be like, right? There may be political change. There may be continued pandemic. There's likely to be continued pandemic. We may be continuing to meet virtually, to work from home, to school virtually. So all this uncertainty, right? How do we present next year's campaign and ask people to participate in this? Know that pledges can be changed. So if you make a gift now and your circumstances change, remind people it's just a pastoral conversation. You can have that. We can change your pledge. It's all going to be fun. We just want you to participate. Be prayerful. Remember that we will, and Christians have, since the beginning of our time together, we've faced uncertainty, and we have relied on our faith and our community to keep us strong and focused. When we're talking about difficult topics, make sure that there is a safe place for everyone to be able to communicate and talk about what's going on for them. In those stewardship conversations, they should be dialogues, conversations, where we're really listening and learning from each other. Nurture all voices. Keep things positive. So when we are faced with difficult questions or difficult times, dwell on what's possible. And that's not to say we need to sweep problems under the rug. It just means that we need to talk about what good is being done. Not everything is just fine, but everything is we're working on that as a community. What are your ideas? How can we support you? How can you support us? You don't have to have all the answers in stewardship campaigns, right? So somebody might ask that zinger of a question, what's this line item for in the budget? Or why are we doing this ministry? And you may not have an answer for it. You can tell them you don't have an answer. You can put them in touch with the people who do. You can say, I'll get back to you in a couple of days with an answer. It's okay not to have answers. And prayer, always prayer. It's what keeps us focused together and how we can stay in community. I want to stop now and use our remaining time to answer your questions. Maybe you can tell us what you're planning or what you're worried about still, or how your stewardship is going. I want to hear from you. So I'm going to take us out of the shared screen. You're going to get these slides later, so you can look at them later. I'm going to take us out of the shared screen and back to our community. And please ask your questions or share with each other and share with us what you're doing and what's going on for you. Does anybody have any questions or anything they'd like to say?
There's a question that comes in the context of this presentation is, what is a successful pledge campaign this year? You know,
I think this year success is 100% participation in some way. We want everybody to make a gift. We want everybody to get involved. We want everybody to know why they are supporting the church. So I think success this year looks like doing our best. It may not be a banner stewardship year where we blow last year's goal out of the water. What it will be, though, is everybody knowing why this community that has supported them through this traumatic event is still supporting each other and working and participating together. So I think that's one of the successes. I think another one is one in which we all know why we are raising money for our church. So we understand the mission of our church. It's been really well communicated from our clergy, from our vestry, from our stewardship committee. People know why the church is doing the work that it's doing in the community, and they can talk about that. I think those are two things that are really important in success this year. We're also, I know many congregations are putting time and talent on their pledge cards as well. And time and talent doesn't look perhaps this year like it has in other years. We don't need as many acolytes and we don't need as many readers and greeters because our liturgies look different when we are virtual. So how are the ways that people can participate with their time and their talent, and giving people ways in? More advisory councils, more meeting participation, more small group work, more education. Those are sometimes the time and talent that we're going to have to ask for this year. We don't need some of the liturgical things, or we need them, but they may not be available to us right now because of the way we're gathering. So think about that. In years past, it's been easy to fill out that time and talent part because we have committees to fill and we have bake sales to put on and we have street fairs to run. What are the things that time and talent comprises this year? Ask for those.
I think Trevor has a question.
Sure.
Well, I just wanted to make a comment. We are beginning or we're launching our stewardship campaign tomorrow. And we're using the TENS material,
Great.
which I find extremely helpful in terms of packaging what we need to do. One of the struggles I find in stewardship, we have a stewardship committee, and we're meeting this afternoon. I think some of them are on or were on this conference, so we're going to meet this afternoon as we try to continue the process for stewardship. But I find some of my own vestry members, they're reluctant to talk to people about money or anything of that nature. And so that's a struggle.
Yeah.
And so the stewardship committee, certainly they're willing to fill those gaps in order that we have a conversation with the parishioners. Because we've been doing things virtually since March.
Great.
We have not returned yet in person, and we're working through those details because we have a pretty vulnerable congregation.
Yeah.
So,
Well, thank you for that. I am so glad that you're using the resources and hope that your kickoff tomorrow is beautiful.
thank you.
It's not easy to talk about money, right? And so I would ask people who resist it, well, why is it that you're resisting it? What's difficult for you? Is it about rejection and the fear? Is it because we feel like money is dirty and we don't want to talk about it spiritually? Engage those questions theologically and supportively because they're there. We all have them. So we should know that. I think at the end of the day, and I always come back to this, if our chief prophet, if Jesus could spend 40% of his parables talking about this stuff, it's important. And we can talk about it too. It's important in the first century, it's important in the 21st century. It's because of all the stuff we put on money that it trickles through, not even trickles, that's a bad word. It moves through our lives and it wraps up everything. And it's one of the ways that we communicate and share ourselves with our community. So we got to talk about money. And so I would invite people into really understanding why it is that they resist it and having some theological conversation about that. And not everybody is a fundraiser. Not everybody wants to do this work. So your stewardship committee, the first job or the first recommendation in the stewardship committee member is, can you talk about money? Are you okay making this invitation? And some people, the answer will never be yes. They have other gifts to share, maybe not the stewardship committee. I want to acknowledge that we are at our time, but I am also happy to keep talking. If you want to go a little bit over, I'm fine with that, but as my clock just reminded us in the background, it is noon. I'm still here to entertain questions though. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about or ask?
Okay. Debbie, I want to thank you for taking once again the opportunity to be here with us. You have been a great resource. And as Trevor is saying, there's other congregations that have been using these resources. I put in the chat box the link to the resources and the username and password so that you have access to these resources. We are members of TENS, and all of these resources are available to us. They are here to help us, and most congregations that I've been talking to and sharing with and communicating experiences with, they have been saying, there are some elements that they have been using and being powerful, especially for those ones who are doing these campaigns. So take a look at those resources, engage, and if you have any questions as well, I know Debbie is always available to answer them, and I'm here as well as a resource to us all. So
thank you.
Yes, and yes.
So I'm also, so I want you to use the TENS resources. We created them and they're ready for you. If you are using other stewardship models and methods, I've been a stewardship guy for a lot of years. I can talk about those too. I'm not just here to talk about TENS. So please, if you're using another model and you want to ask questions about it, my email address, I'm typing it in right now. Just give me a holler, and I'm so happy to share my ideas with you. I've also put in a link to our upcoming webinar. We have one in at the end of the month on planned giving and legacy societies and endowments. So I know we're still in the middle of stewardship season, but we got to talk about that other work of church too. So sign up for that. Tell your friends about it. We'll be talking about taxes and planned giving. It'll be great. So join us for that. I've also sent you a link for a very short survey, if you wouldn't mind filling it out. I've been using these surveys and I send them back to Ken and Victor after you input them, and it helps us develop the next webinar, whenever that will be, for you all. And we want to keep you getting the information that you want and need. Finally, I just want to remind you that I will send out this video later this afternoon and the slides. So you'll be able to access this work and share it with your communities. We really appreciate your membership and your time today.
Thank you. Thank you, Debbie. And thanks everyone for taking a part of this Saturday to be with us, and let's keep praying together. I know that prayer guides us through all of this process and helps us center again where we need to be centered again. So thank you, and have a blessed rest of the day today. Thank you.
Thanks, friends.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.